I don't know how to begin. I've been reading and rereading these words for hours, trying to make sense of what happened that night. But the truth is, none of it makes sense. My name is Jake, and 3 days ago my friends and I went to film a video for our urban exploration channel in an abandoned prison. Today I'm the only one left, and I'm not even sure if I'm still myself. I need to tell this now, before it's too late. The Plan Our YouTube channel Phantom Explorers was growing quickly. It was me, Dylan, Matt, and Sarah on the team. We had already explored abandoned factories, supposedly haunted mansions, and even a deactivated psychiatric hospital. But nothing compared to Blackridge Prison. Closed in the 1980s, the complex became notorious for a series of unexplained deaths. Officially, it was blamed on violent riots, suicides, and unsanitary conditions. But there were darker accounts. Inmates who vanished without a trace. Guards who swore they saw figures roaming the yard at night. Voices echoing through the walls, calling out names no one recognized. It was the perfect legend for an urban exploration video. Our plan was simple. We'd do an overnight challenge, spend the entire night inside and record any strange activity. We wanted views and adrenaline. We thought we were ready. We were naive. The arrival. We arrived at the prison just before midnight. The high concrete walls and crumbling watchtowers made it look like an abandoned fortress. Rusty gates, thick chains, and giant padlocks sealed the main entrance. Dylan used an industrial bolt cutter to break through the metal, and soon we were inside. "Welcome to Blackridge," Matt joked, imitating a tour guide's voice for the camera. Sarah was especially quiet. She'd always been the most skeptical one, but she seemed unsettled by the heavy atmosphere. Dylan and I exchanged a look. It was time to switch on our lights and start filming. As soon as we crossed the gate, a musty metallic smell filled our lungs. The cold air felt like it was pressing down on our shoulders. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening thud. Dylan tried to laugh it off, saying it must have been the wind, but no one found it funny. The first hour, mounting. Tension. During the first hour, we explored empty cells, scattered inmate files on the floor, and tattered posters peeling off walls. It seemed just like any neglected place. Nothing happened, until we reached the West Wing. There, we found a cell with nail scratches everywhere, deep gouges in a chaotic pattern covering almost the entire surface of the walls. Dylan filmed everything while Sarah took pictures. There was something deeply unsettling about those marks, as if whoever made them was out of their mind, fighting something unseen or desperate to escape. "This can't just be desperation," Matt muttered, voice tense. Right then, our flashlights started flickering. Dylan, who was wearing headphones connected to our audio recorder, froze, eyes wide. "Jake, listen," he whispered, holding out the headphone for me. I put it to my ear, and for a moment all I heard was static. Then came a hoarse, slow, distorted whisper. "Jake." It seemed to be calling my name. A chill ran down my spine. Cold sweat trickled down the back of my neck. Collapse, the entity manifests, right? After I took off the headphone, a loud crash made us all jump. One of the nearby cell doors slammed shut violently, as if someone had thrown it. Matt screamed and bolted down the corridor. Sarah and Dylan followed, and I came last, dragging the camera tripod almost left behind. In the corridor's gloom, our flashlights flickered, their beams shifting between light and dark. It felt like the building itself was alive, the walls pulsing, expanding and contracting. Around us, each step echoed like a drumbeat. We stopped for breath, and that's when we heard something approaching. Footsteps, heavy, dragging, like chains being pulled across the floor. We turned our flashlights behind us. Nothing. But when Dylan reviewed the footage, we saw a shadow at the end of the corridor, faceless, indefinite, just a dark silhouette that seemed to watch us. And on the video, it moved, slowly but relentlessly, drawing closer, frame by frame. The endless corridor. We tried to run toward the main exit, hoping the chains wouldn't be locked again. But when we got there, the chains Dylan had broken were mysteriously whole, locked with the same padlock. That was when the first truly impossible event occurred. Sarah tried yanking on the chains, and one of our flashlights illuminated the bow. Perfectly intact padlock, there was no sign of any recent cut or break. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah exclaimed, on the verge of losing it. Then, our flashlights and cameras began draining power rapidly. Darkness swallowed us, and the prison seemed to find its voice. Whispers came from the corridor's corners, calling our names, repeating them in chorus, sometimes pleading, sometimes mocking. Cell doors started slamming shut one after another, as though an invisible force was marching down the row. With each bang, we felt a constriction in our chests, as if the air were turning thin. Matt cursed, Dylan trembled, Sarah sobbed, and I was clueless as to how to stop the nightmare. Matt's disappearance. At a certain point, we turned into a corridor lined with half-open cells, all swinging at once. A chilly breeze blew from an unknown source. Matt, desperate to leave, sprinted ahead. We shouted for him to stop, but it was useless. His panic drove him forward. A second later, we heard Matt's scream echo from down the hall. We ran to find him, our lights searching frantically. He was gone. Only one of his flashlights lay on the ground, flickering like a dying firefly. Dylan picked it up, calling Matt's name again and again, but only silence responded, until a muffled laughter sounded somewhere in the distance, as if someone found our inability to find him amusing. "Matt!" Sarah kept yelling. "Matt! Where are you?" I shouted. There was no reply, just the sense of being watched through the cracks in the half-closed cell doors. Sarah's disappearance. Not knowing where Matt was, we agreed to head back to the administrative area, hoping to find a map or even an emergency exit. Sarah led the way, shaking with anger and fear, repeating that we had to find Matt no matter what. Dylan hardly spoke, still in shock from his friend's sudden vanishing. Inside the administrative office, we found overturned files, smashed desks, and a crooked sign dangling from the ceiling. An old radio rested in the corner. Sarah hurried over to it, desperately trying to tune in any station for help. The device hissed softly, then fell silent. We looked back and realized Sarah was no longer with us. That single second of distraction was enough. I locked eyes with Dylan, terror mirrored in our faces. "Sarah?" I called, dread weighing on me. I tried opening the double doors leading to the corridor, but they suddenly slammed in my face, knocking me backward. Dylan rushed to help me up, and we heard scratching on the other side like nails on wood, followed by a muffled scream that faded into the distance. When we finally forced the doors open, the corridor was empty. On the floor lay Sarah's phone, its screen displaying the last recorded video, a shaky clip. Dylan picked it up and played it. The camera was aimed solely at Sarah's terrified face, as though she were filming herself. Her gaze seemed to track something off screen. Then she let out a scream. The footage ended abruptly. Dylan and I were verging on madness. In a matter of minutes, two of our friends had vanished. A claustrophobic feeling enveloped us, like the walls of the prison were closing in. More than once, I thought I saw Matt or Sarah at the end of a corridor, but running after them only led to emptiness. We sensed footsteps behind us, but it was always just an echo. At one point, we tried forcing open a window leading to the yard. The bars were completely wrapped in chains and locks. Without proper tools, it was hopeless. It was as though the building was alive, reacting to our moves, blocking any chance of escape. That was when we saw the shadow clearly for the first time. Standing in the abandoned cafeteria, under a faint flicker of an old emergency light, there it was in the corner. A tall silhouette, no face, no defining features, but it seemed to stare at us. I had the distinct impression it was smiling, even with no face. Dylan's disappearance, we tried to keep calm, but it was impossible. Dylan began shouting, demanding the shadow show itself or leave us alone, or at least explain what it wanted. In response, the lights flickered violently, plunging the cafeteria into pitch blackness for a few seconds. When they came back, Dylan was no longer at my side. My heart pounded like a drum. I called his name, I searched every corner, I flipped over tables, opened doors. Nothing. The prison seemed to mock me, producing echoes of footsteps and distant laughter. In one corner, I found Dylan's backpack emptied onto the floor. His belongings lay scattered, but he was gone. Suddenly, the ancient sound system crackled to life, something that probably hadn't worked in decades, blaring static that made me cover my ears. Then a voice spoke through the speakers in a low whisper. "Jake, why are you still here?" I froze. It sounded as if it was both mocking and sincerely asking at the same time. I tried to run, but my legs were shaking. Escape or trap? I can't say how long I wandered the corridors calling for Dylan, Matt, and Sarah. The place seemed larger, labyrinthine, as if it changed each time I turned a corner. Hallways I was sure I'd passed through before led to totally different wings now. I remember crying, pounding on cell doors, begging for it all to stop. I didn't know if I was hallucinating or if some supernatural force was truly toying with me. Amid this haze of fear, I stumbled upon, by some miracle, the same administrative office as before. Inside, the big double doors to the yard were unlocked. Cautiously opened them and found myself in the inner yard, a wide space of cracked concrete overgrown with tall weeds. The moon hung between the clouds, its cold, pale glow illuminating everything. I walked toward the walls and, to my shock, found a small metal door slightly ajar. I slipped through without thinking. I was outside. The prison walls loomed behind, me in the moonlight. My friends were gone, but I was free. I ran, stumbling through the overgrowth until I reached our parked car. The next day, in broad daylight, I went to the nearest police station and told my story. Nobody believed me at first. They sent a police team to investigate. They found only scattered gear, some damaged cameras, and signs of a break-in at the entrance. No trace of Matt, Sarah, or Dylan. I tried to explain that the chains had resealed themselves, that there was some entity in there, but the officers looked at me skeptically. They searched for days in vain. Eventually, they concluded my friends were missing, but there was no clue as to where they might be. The recordings, the few fragments of footage I managed to recover, show confusing scenes. Dark corridors, doors slamming shut on their own, whispers repeating our names. In one clip, you can clearly see the shadow at the end of the corridor, a twisted silhouette sliding across the floor. Some segments made it onto the internet, but most were confiscated. People who've watched say they saw faces in the corners. Of the frames, faces that weren't any of us. Rumors spread that the complete tapes are even more disturbing and can drive anyone insane. Now, 3 days later, I live in a state of numbness. I can't eat, sleep, or think about anything but the prison. My friends remain missing. At night, I have the same nightmares. I'm locked in a cell, hearing Matt, Dylan, and Sarah call for me, but when I run to them, I only find that tall shadow staring me down. I feel something followed me out of Blackridge. Sometimes I glimpse dark shapes moving at the edge of my vision. Or for a split second, I hear the whispers of the prison echoing in my house. Maybe they're just hallucinations from trauma, or maybe that place chooses certain people, refusing to let them leave entirely. I don't know how long I can last before I lose my mind or disappear like my friends. But I'm certain of one thing. Blackridge isn't just an abandoned prison. It's a place marked by something that shouldn't exist. And that something won't let intruders walk away unscathed. If you're reading this, please don't go there. Don't fool yourself into thinking it'll be just another urban exploration. Some places bear such a strong imprint of evil that they stop being mere superstition and become an entity. And that entity exacts a terrible price. Perhaps I'm already paying mine.